person at an exhibition say to me, I don't really understand why you have a whole exhibition about fire starters. I was like, I'm sorry, what? I think it's our job at Foster Youth Museum to tell the story of foster youth with as much dignity, respect, and appreciation as possible. They deserve it. So my name is Jamie Lee Evans, and I'm originally from Gardena, California. And when I was in care, none of this stuff existed, right? Advocacy organizations didn't exist. So I was in care in the early 70s. And I never would have imagined during my most lonely and scared times, I would not have imagined that there would be this much community around kids who go through this terrifying experience of being removed from your parents, because it doesn't really matter if your parents are good parents or not. Kids love their parents. Like, parents can hurt them, parents can ignore them, parents can neglect them, and you still love your parents. And when I got the opportunity to work with other former foster youth to help them have a voice, I said, yes, please, I'll go, I'm in. We are traveling exhibitions, so we go when folks fund us to put up. And in this case, we're telling the story of foster care from a youth's perspective for an organization that also serves foster youth and is doing a fundraiser.
This amazing, series of exhibits that really help highlight young people's stories in foster care, stories of triumph and struggle, stories of connection and loss, and gain, and all sorts of amazing things that really help build more awareness and help to really shift some of the stigma that a lot of folks have about foster youth and what they're capable of.
Awareness really is a powerful tool, and that's what this whole event and museum, that's what it's rooted in, is in community, is in storytelling.
And what a lot of young people have told us is Foster Youth Museum is like a vessel for healing. We tell their stories with dignity. We represent them in the strongest way possible because they deserve it.
Honestly, if we weren't exposed to others that are trying to help foster youth, or kids that are in the system or anything, if we weren't able to see the success stories of those people, we wouldn't feel like we could also do that.
That it was possible.
That it was possible.
When I think about my early experiences going into foster care, there was very little attention to trauma-focused interventions. There was very little focus on me being a kid. I think a lot of the times, because the system is so overworked and overburdened, that they exist to make sure that kids are safe. But it's not just safety that's important.
When you get put into foster care, you think, I don't deserve anything. And I think the message you get is that I'm not worth nothing, right? So when you come to something like Foster Youth Museum and see your life told with power, with respect, then I think you get a different sense, an internalized message that I am somebody, I am worth something, and my story is important.
Aloha kako, my name is Ikolani Mae, and I am a former foster youth from the island of Molokai in Hawaii. So that song was taught to me by this young woman named Waimarie, who was an exchange student from Aotearoa when I was in foster care. I was recently placed in foster care. Waimarie was one of the first people that I felt like I could be myself with without judgment. And we were at a baseball park one day and she said, "Oh, Ipo, I'll be your family now. My mom can be your mom, and my dad, you can call him Pops, and we have a sister. And we can be a family." And a year later, she passed away in a car accident.
The predominant experience that foster youth experience right away in care is loss. We know that young people, when they go into foster care, they're losing things. They're losing their family, sometimes their siblings, They're losing their things, they're losing their neighborhoods, they're losing their churches, they're losing their schools. Like, they lose their toys, they lose their balls, they lose their bicycles, they lose all the, sometimes their teddy bears, like they lose it all. And they don't go home and pack a nice little couple suitcases for the kids, right? Sometimes they get lifted up in school, sometimes they're taken by the cops, and they get put into care from the police station. So they lose quite a lot.
So I'm from Hawaii. I'm Hawaiian, and I'm also Maori. And so for those indigenous cultures, your whānau or your ohana is everything. Like, young people impacted by the foster care system all share a common sense of loss of identity because you are your ohana name. Not having anyone in my bio family willing to fight for me really, I think, for me, puts a crisis on your identity and trying to figure out who you are and where you belong if you don't have a family. Family is everything back home. Ohana is family, and family is forever. But that's not always the case. Yeah.
My name is Delrisha White, and I had the pleasure and honor of hosting today's event, Pivotal Connect. Yeah, I've had a lot of really interesting experiences in the foster care system. I think some of the most traumatic experiences that you have heard me and my siblings have gone through. Physical, sexual, emotional violence, you name it, we've gone through it. My family was impacted by the war on drugs, so during a time where a lot of Black and brown families struggle with addiction that was actually pushed into Black and brown communities by the government, that's another conversation, we were heavily impacted. So we were in that number. Both of my parents struggled with addiction, and because of the politics of the day, there was no salvation if you were a Black or brown person who struggled with addiction. Like, you got the harshest punishment. You were incarcerated longer periods of time. Violence was perpetuated against Black bodies and the families of those. When you have a parent or a sibling or a loved one that's incarcerated, the whole family pays for that.
My name is Teresa Gamboa, and I am a former foster youth. I was actually brought into the foster system at 15 years old. My father is a high-ranking gang member. He also uses paraphernalia, like meth. Unfortunately, my parents were both kind of really off on their own tangent. They really couldn't support me at the time, even be there mentally for me. There's been a lot of times where I've experienced a lot of physical abuse and all that, but there was one night where I kind of looked unrecognizable. My mom, she always took my dad over me. She'd watch a grown man high on meth, beat his daughters. It's just a really bad environment.
This piece right here is you see booze, you see pills, you see needles. So many of us go into care because our parents have problems with substances, right?
So I saw my parents and their health fail right in front of us. Seeing their health fail because of the choices they made with drugs and alcohol, it made me want to know how that cannot happen to us, how that could not happen to others. How can you avoid that? I am trying to inspire people to just love their bodies and realize it's all you have. And the majority of the time, it's poisoned when you're lost in the system. You poison yourself.
The next section is hopelessness. This is the story of Tramisha and the hopelessness that went down when she was first in foster care, right? Girl needs some support, and they tell her, too bad, so sad, we're not here about that. Her story is this: her mom died when she was, a tween, so she went into foster care. That, as you can imagine, that's the time when girls start their periods. So she went to her foster mom and said, I need some sanitary napkins, and her foster mom said, I'm not paid to get you sanitary napkins. So sweet little Tramisha took toilet paper and a stapler and made sanitary napkins that way.
Essentially, the foster care system is state-sanctioned family separation.
The older we get and the longer it's been since we've been in foster care, the less people take our experience seriously. My name is John Paul Horn. I'm an assistant professor of social work at California State University, East Bay. I got really interested in getting my PhD and doing what I do now because I was just so tired of people telling me that I didn't have the credentials to have an opinion about my own experience. The first time I was taken away from home was when I was 5 years old. I can remember just feeling very violated by adults back then, even the ones who were there, who were supposed to, I guess, keep me safe. I don't know if you can remember being 5 years old, but the only interaction I'd really ever had was with my family. And I just remember being terrified because there were a whole bunch of strangers who were asking me a whole bunch of questions about food and whether or not I was getting abused and who was taking care of me and what was going on in the house. I don't trust them, so I'm not going to answer their questions. And feeling very vulnerable because not only did I have to answer their questions, but at 5 years old, I remember having to shower in front of another person who was not related to me so that they could make sure that I didn't have any bruises or any marks on me to make sure that I wasn't being abused. Knowing now what I know about human development and how young people develop into adults, I think one of the things that really stands out to me is just how little focus there was on me as a developing person in the child welfare system and how much the focus was on the idea of safety and government compliance.
I don't know if people know, but sometimes there's no placements for young people, so they place them in juvenile hall. These underwear are from a jail, and what I learned from young people is that when you're in juvenile hall, you don't get your own underwear. You have to share underwear. And however the laundry gets picked up, it gets taken, and then they come back and they give you what they give you. So there was a group of young people in Northern California, young men actually, who were like, our laundry's not getting washed well enough. And so they wanted to test out whether that was true. So on their underwear, they took on pencil, they wrote initials on the underwear. And they knew if the underwear came back with the initials still in, they were not being properly washed. It's different now, but I will say at the time the county's response was, we're men and we don't know how to do laundry. No shit, that's a true story. For girls, if you're in juvenile hall, in some institutions, you must wear a pad, a sanitary pad, 24/7. Now, that's uncomfortable. It causes yeast infections. It's scratchy. And what happens sometimes is the guards will come around and go, are you wearing a pad? And you're actually required to pull your pants out and show that you have a pad on. Most people don't know that that's part of the story. In addition to juvenile hall, young people often get placed in mental institutions. And this is the gown that one of our donors to the museum had to wear when they were like 15, 16. And that's all they were allowed to wear. So all day, every day, they were wearing hospital gowns. That's their story, right? That's dehumanizing, right? That's embarrassing. That doesn't allow them to feel normal, right? How is that okay? And this is part of the foster care experience.
By the time I got to third grade, my mom lost custody of us because of neglect and because my mom was addicted to drugs and she needed to go and get sober. That was the plan. My brother and I went to live with a pastor and his wife. And I should be very clear that prior to entering foster care, I was never abused. But this pastor and his wife absolutely beat the crap out of me and my brother almost continuously for a year. I kept telling people that it was happening and they just didn't believe me. And I kind of gave up on the idea that these adults were really supposed to be there to protect me, and instead that it really just felt like these adults were there to keep me from my family. As circumstances would have it, I accidentally left ice on the floor one night because I was 8, and my foster mom went to the fridge at night and she slipped on, I guess, what was now water and fell and broke her hip. And the paramedics came to get her, and my foster dad had me slammed against the wall when the paramedics arrived. And so finally someone witnessed the abuse that I was receiving, and so they came and got me. I ended up going to a group home by the time I was in 6th grade, and now a group home, if you're not aware of it, is a place where instead of foster parents, you have staff members who work there, and the staff members often are people who are trying to get their degrees, and they're learning the skills, and it's great, but I believe that they're underpaid as well. There are other things, like they can't give you hugs, they have to be really careful about touch, and I needed to just know that people cared about me, and so I would act out, and I would start kicking holes in walls so that they would have to restrain me. Because as it turns out, they can touch you if they need to restrain you. The whole point of rearing children and raising kids is to raise them so that they leave the home and become adults, that they become self-sufficient, that they become, I guess, for a better sake of word, good citizens of the world.
One of the great things about my experience in the foster care experience was the opportunity to be really involved in youth empowerment organizations. My name is Darren Green, and I'm a former foster youth that emancipated out of care way back in 2002. I feel like a lot of the work that I do is really to help address those types of assumptions that people make about what young people are capable of. They're capable of so much more if they have the opportunity. You know, if they have people who understand the behaviors that they're exhibiting in those moments, like reactions to trauma, like reactions to, systemic oppression, those reactions to microaggressions and stuff like that. If they understand what those are, then they're able to respond more healthily to help young people learn how to manage their reactions, manage those, stress responses so they can be more effective in the world around them. When young people's needs are met, then they're able to do a lot more. How are you going to focus on, doing good in school when you're worried whether or not you have a home?
The reason why I overcame a lot is because there was actual structure provided in my life from people that I barely met and barely knew. And that was Pivotal and a couple other organizations and resources here in Silicon Valley. They've been there from the start. I met Pivotal around 18 years old. And from there, they just really nurtured me and gave me all the support and the structure that an actual child needs to succeed, whether it was tutoring, whether it was resources, whether it was someone to talk to. I had an adult that actually cared for me and actually wanted to see me succeed. And that's not something I was used to with my family.
One of the requirements for graduating was reciting your genealogy as part of honoring your ancestors. And I remember being up on that stage and breaking down because out of everybody in my class, we all had dedicated seats for our family, and my entire row was empty. Nobody from my birth family was able to make it. And I started crying on the stage, and then people noticed that I was struggling. My chosen mom, she started chanting from the back of the crowd, and she broke all the rules. It was really amazing because you're not supposed to approach us, but she was like, I don't care. And she brought me a lane. As she was chanting, all these people who were not related to me filled up my seats. And it was at that moment that I was like, just because I don't have this birth family doesn't mean I don't have a family. And I'm really thankful for them and them changing my perspective of what family is.
For me, it was kind of holding the vision for myself, or what I wanted, bigger picture. I knew college was in the cards for me because there was no other way. In my opinion, that was the opinion I held for myself. I have no other choice. We got to go to college, right? And so because of that, that's really what created a series of opportunities. That single choice created a ripple effect, if you will.
I just knew that education was my golden ticket. That was the only thing to get me out of the situation. I didn't think of, nor did I know any other way to get myself out of the really bad situation I was in.
Part of the reason why I ended up getting my degree was because I met a former foster youth that was in the Guardian Scholars Program at SF State. I had no clue about it. I grew up in the Central Valley in Kern County. So I moved to San Francisco, was a part of that program, was able to graduate. So I got my degree in communication studies with a minor in counseling. I mean, it took me 16 years. But I'll often say that the value of the education wasn't in getting the degree, it was in the actual courses that I took. It was what I learned and was able to directly apply to my work. And young people are able to do that. You know, many foster youth are able to get access to a free education. Whether they know that or not is the question.
What's really interesting, so you see like some graduation, this is an actual cap and gown, we have the gown, this is the cap, actual diplomas, right? And people are like, why would someone give their diploma up? And they give it up because not everyone has a family that wants their diploma on the wall. Not everyone has their own home to put their diploma on the wall.
So we're motivated. You know, we're motivated because we know what it's like when these things aren't there. And, you know, thinking about, you know, Gandhi's quote around be the change you want to see in the world, so many young people do that exact thing when they have the opportunity to be involved in youth empowerment organizations. Specifically ones like the California Youth Connection. It really focuses on empowering young people to be prepared and willing and able to really be a part of decision-making tables within the state.
There's many, many activist groups that exist in the US and in the world, but California Youth Connection is probably one of the strongest and longest running foster youth advocacy organizations that exist. And the young people at CYC advocated, you know, did all the work, did all the background work, did all the legal work, did all the advocacy and communication with Arnold Schwarzenegger. He signed into law 4 different foster care bills. This pen here is a governor's pen, and he actually gave it to one of our members, who then brought it to us.
The community that I was a part of really helped me grow and transform from being like a really meek and quiet kid, you know, where things were done to and for him, to someone who's, you know, the person I am today. They say things like you're a success. And it makes me wonder, like, what do they mean by success? What are they qualifying that as? Because a lot of young people are very successful from foster care, but they may not meet the benchmarks alongside their peers. You know, they may not be CEOs of companies, you know, by 30, you know, but they may be building powerful families and breaking cycles of abuse and violence, and, you know, becoming civically engaged and making a shift in their community. And that is powerful. That is success to me.
There's a light at the end of the tunnel. There is a light at the end of the tunnel. There is victory on the other side. You just have to make the next step. What I would tell my younger self is to keep putting your best foot forward. Don't stop. There is victory at the end of this. There is eminent success at the end of this. You just have to keep pushing yourself.
If you've ever belonged to a population that has been marginalized or is a vulnerable population, and you have people in power telling you that you don't have the experience or the credentials to talk to them about what happened to you, that get them.
Oftentimes people go one of two ways, where the traumas of the system are kind of imposed on you, and, you know, it's harder for people to be self-sufficient. And then other people excel because the system gives them an experience that other people don't have. So for me, because I moved around a lot, I was able to relate and connect to people from different walks of life. Because I had lived with Mexicans before, because I had lived with white people before, because I have lived with you know, black families before, because I was the new student and I had to learn to adapt to people all the time. And I think that those skills are the same skills that I leverage now as a professional, right? As an educator, as a leader, as a founder, a business owner.
You know, if I didn't have the Jamies and if I didn't build the relationships that I built, and if people didn't love me, just selflessly love me, even when I was messing up, even when I couldn't love myself or be accountable to my mistakes, if people weren't loving me through that, I wouldn't have been able to survive. And so I think it's my kuleana and my job to love people through their there are ebbs and flows of life too. Even if you're struggling, even if you couldn't show up today, it's okay, because I still love you and I'm still gonna fight for you when you need me to fight. And even when you cannot fight for yourself, we're gonna still fight for you because you deserve that.
For all we have.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah. That's what we're told all our lives. We're all that we have. So, and we've learned to work through a lot of whatever issues we have as siblings.
I think the foster youth community is, we're really a big family in the sense that we celebrate each other's wins. So young people being able to pass these bills that create better opportunities for our brothers and sisters who are in care now, like we celebrate that every single day.
Learn how to tell your story in a way that brings people in and not in a way that makes you the victim, right? Foster youth, you are nobody's project, right? You are a person who a lot of adults have failed. And I think the reframe of the level of traumas create opportunities for people to be interested, create opportunities for people to want to learn more, and also create opportunities for you to forgive yourself and your family or whoever had a hand in your condition.
I hated my birth mom for a long time, and I hated my biological family for a long time until I understood the impacts of trauma and what it does. Hurt people really do hurt people. And so I had to go back and I had to learn what kind of things did my birth mom have to endure? What kind of things did my grandmother have to endure? What kind of things did her mother have to endure for it to be where it was? Because I couldn't understand, how can you not love me? How can you not love your kid? But my mom wasn't as lucky as I was. My mom wasn't as fortunate as I was to have the supports and the people that I did. Nobody fought for her the way that they fought for me. And I think had they did, I would have had a different life. So I think it's my responsibility to do the work that I need to do to be able to fight for other people.
People transitions us into the hope and transformation section, and so what young people have told us is that what makes a really big difference in their life are a few things. One is education, one is travel and opportunity. The whole museum is designed to tell the story of foster care from a youth's perspective, and it finishes with this section, Transformation and Hope, that shows how young people get out of trauma.
Doing the work to heal generational trauma means going to therapy. It means going to therapy. It means surrounding yourself by people who empower and support you and understand you and have no judgment, but just love you to love you, and who inspire you to love yourself and love other people as well, and just keep vibrating that senses of aloha into all the spaces that you go. It's important that we keep telling these stories, and it's important that we educate people on, like, it's really rough being in foster care. And what are we going to do as a society to make sure that we can be better to our young people, because our young people deserve that. E honore, e kororia, mga rongo ki te whenua, whakaro, paie, ki nā tangata katoa. Ake, amine, te atua, te piri.